I'm Gary C. Johnson. You've seen these billboards and ads that say size matters. I agree. The size that matters is the size of the results the law firm gets for their clients. We have several multi-million-dollar verdicts here in Kentucky. In fact, our firm owns the record for the single largest personal injury verdict in the state of Kentucky. That's the size that matters to you. In Kentucky, give our firm the call.
If you're hurt, injured, don't waste time. Gary Johnson drives for every dime.
Welcome to Simply the Law of Life, a program created by attorney Gary C. Johnson. Simply the Law of Life provides free legal advice and encourages happiness and quality of life. Now, here's Simply the Law of Life with Gary C. Johnson and Keith Casebolt.
Hello, everyone. Keith Casebolt back with you. Welcome into Simply the Law of Life, a radio program created by my good friend, Gary C. Johnson. Hello, friend.
Hello, my good friends out there. Is everyone having a wonderful time?
How could we have anything but a wonderful time?
Well, some of the folks that are listening just said,
Let
me tell you, you got all day, I'll tell you.
Don't you know all of the world's problems? Don't you know what's going on? Don't you know everything that's happening?
Don't you know what I just went through?
We know all of it. The sad fact is there's nothing we can do about it, is there, other than our attitude?
Yeah. Before we get started, I want to say something. A client came in the other day, been in a bad wreck. The person that hit him had $25,000 in insurance. Person was seriously injured. I get the insurance policy of my client, and they have $500,000 in liability coverage that would cover someone else, and no underinsured motorist, none, zero.
And Gary, this is the biggest misconception that there is. Everybody thinks if somebody does you wrong and they run over you and they break your body up, that there's this big pot of gold that they can come to you and say, Gary, please go get this and help me. But that's not true. If there's not insurance, there's nothing that can be done.
Your case is worth the amount of insurance. That simple. So that's why, my friends, it's been a while since I've mentioned this on the program. Buy under insurance on your insurance policy. Get your deck sheet out, look at it, make absolutely certain you have under insurance. I'm not talking about uninsured motors. That's different. This is under insurance.
Now, let me ask you a question before you go any farther, because I cringe every time I see the commercial that says, we only sell you what you need. I almost guarantee you that when you buy that policy, it is not what you need.
You can bet your life on it.
It's what they want you to have because it's profitable.
It's what's in their best interest. They do not want to sell you under insurance. Okay?
Yeah, because it's to your advantage.
You have to ask for it.
So it's to your advantage. If you have to ask for it, that should tell you something right off the bat.
That it's a bad deal for the insurance company.
Bad deal for the insurance company, good deal for you.
Now let's change the subject.
All right, let's do that.
Okay, let's do something funny. I ran into some quotes from the legendary Will Rogers.
Very smart guy.
Okay, I'm going to read some of them to you.
Okay.
Number 1, never squat with your spurs on.
That almost sounds like buying that insurance you need from that one company. It's going to end up being a pain.
He also said, never slap a man that's chewing tobacco.
That makes sense to me. Kind of like spitting in the wind, isn't it?
Never kick cow dung on a hot day.
Oh, Will had a little time to sit around and think of these things.
And here's the best one I think he ever said. There are 2 theories to arguing with a woman. Neither works. Number 4, what he has to say about it. Never miss a good chance to shut up.
Boy, now there's some advice, isn't there?
Yeah. Here's a good one. Always drink upstream from the herd.
If you don't want that added flavor, I would say that's a real good one.
If going through life you find you're in a hole, stop digging.
All of us could use that advice.
Isn't that the truth?
Because we have found out, if nothing else on this program, our biggest enemy is us.
That goes back with what I've preached to people for years, and I had to tell someone the other day to take a loss. And they said, well, I don't want to take a loss. I said, your first loss is your best loss.
Probably some of the greatest advice you've ever given. People want to double down, and they want to triple down or dig in. And I've heard you say so many times, and I've heard you even give that advice to people over the telephone. Hey, your first loss is your best one. Take it and move on.
Take it and move on. That deal is a bad deal. Move on. Take that loss and quit.
Before it becomes a worse deal.
Before the hole gets deeper.
Yeah, boy.
The only way I have found to double my money is to fold it and put it back in my pocket.
Will must have been in the stock market. I relate to that one.
Then he says there's three kinds of men. The ones that learn by reading, the few who learn by observation. The rest of them have to pee on the electric fence and find out for themselves.
Experience. Experience is the hardest way to learn.
Yeah, the only way they'll ever learn.
You know, I wonder how many of us would raise our hand and admit that that is us. We could read, we could ask, we could do all those things, but no, we got to go over to the fence and pee on it or touch it before we figure out that it's going to electrocute you.
Here's a good one. Good judgment comes from experience, and a lot of that experience comes from bad judgment.
Amen to that. Yeah, you don't get that experience unless you made a bad judgment.
Okay. If you're riding ahead of the herd, take a look back every now and then to make sure it's still there.
To see if someone's following you or not.
If you think you're being a leader, you need to look back and see if there's anyone following what he's trying to tell you. Letting the cat out of the bag, that's just life.
Yeah.
You've heard people say, I've let the cat out of the bag.
Many a times.
It's a whole lot easier than putting it back.
Isn't that the truth?
Here's a really good one. After eating an entire bull, a mountain lion felt so good he started roaring. He kept it up until a hunter came along and shot him. The moral, when you're full of bull, keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
And then he had a final one about growing older. He said, eventually you will reach a point when you stop lying about your age and start bragging about it.
Amen to that. You
I
know,
thought those were something that, a little levity in the program here.
and that was a good one because a lot of people will talk about, oh, there's nothing fun about getting older. Oh, yes, there is. There's a whole lot fun about getting older. The fact that you're getting older is fun.
Oh, yes.
How many people would give anything they had to be able to say that, right?
Well, when you're dead, you have nothing.
Well, you're not sitting here laughing like you and I are about being full of bull and talking about how good it
And
is
there
to
are
be here.
those that just listened to this part of the show and said, yep, they're full of it, and they need to be keeping their mouth shut.
But you know what? That's okay. We're having a good time.
We're having fun.
Yeah.
We're roaring like that old lion, right?
We're laughing and enjoying it. That's the main thing.
Okay, I read a little article the other day about the 10 biggest fears holding you back from success.
It shocks me that you would have articles on that because most of our people would say, Gary, the year was all about being successful. Who would be fearful of being a success? I think we all would embrace it, wouldn't we?
And, oh, yes, and we've talked about this before. The first one I'm going to mention on the fears to keep you from being a success, my friends, is the fear of failure.
The biggest one.
This fear marks another reason why some fail to exceed. They say, my life didn't go exactly as planned, and I'm sure yours hasn't either, says somebody.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good practice to identify the things you can control in your bravery journey and to focus on them. It'll allow you to stop focusing on the happenings you have no control over. How many of my friends is out there worrying about something you can't control?
Yeah.
trying to worry about what somebody's doing that you can't control, worrying about the world that you can't control, worrying for the sake of worrying.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I've run things by you and I've said, Gary, I'm thinking about trying this, but I'm worried it may not work. And your answer has always been the same. So it doesn't work. Try something else.
Yep.
Move on.
The other one, next one on the 10, is the fear of inadequacy. Once you admit that you're experiencing the fear of inadequacy, understanding is on its way.
You know, isn't that amazing that we always seem to believe that someone else is better than us or that would know more than us about it? And then you get in there and you find out, wait a minute, I just perceived them to know more. They actually don't.
It's always that way.
Well, like the story you told when you went to New York City to go up against the big attorneys in New York City, and you came back and said, oh, my goodness. The attorneys I go up against in central Kentucky and eastern Kentucky would eat their lunch. These people were a pushover.
The perception.
Oh, the perception was they got to be good.
Yeah, because they're there, right?
Yeah, not true.
Nope. Next fear, the fear of uncertainty.
Boy, isn't that a big one?
That goes along with the fear of failure.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually, it goes along with the fear of inadequacy. They're all the same.
But doesn't that one apply to what you always talk to us about? When in doubt, go forward. I mean, your theory is always the same. When in doubt, just go forward. Don't be sitting there saying, what if, or should I, or could I, or what happens here?
That reminds me of my favorite saying.
Mm-hmm.
To change, my friends, is to grow. To have changed often is to have grown much. I love that saying.
Gary, shouldn't all of us embrace that to the fact that we should want to change every day of our life because that means you're growing?
You are growing. And my friends, if you're not content with the way you are, you're going to change, right? The ones of you that are listening, huh?
Your great quote that I liked, you will only change the things you can't tolerate. Once you get to a point where you say, I can no longer stand this, you will change it, no matter what it is.
You have no choice.
But if you can tolerate it, the odds are you will never change it.
And that's the sad part, because happiness is a total fulfillment.
In other words, it's not something we should settle for.
It's not just something you just tolerate.
Yeah. So we're here, and you're saying none of us should say, I'm kind of happy, or I'm kind of enjoying life. You're saying, no, that's not good enough.
Nope.
We should demand to be happy and enjoying life.
And understand your own worth. That's the biggest thing I've found in the people I deal with is they clearly don't understand their own worth. They've fallen into this, you're from eastern Kentucky, or you're this, or you're from head of this holler. You're not like other people. Well, that's just a bunch of bull.
Let me ask you, Gary, a personal question on that. When it comes to your clients, if they didn't have you, if they were representing themselves, would they settle for far, far less when they've been injured just because of the self-esteem and not thinking that their life was worth that?
Well, if they didn't have an attorney, they wouldn't get anything.
That's what I'm saying, because of you. Because you come in and say, wait a minute. You say they're unique or one of a kind, and you value them priceless.
I was noticing, reading a while ago about a verdict out in Iowa, that this baby, they had not done what they should have done to protect it during birth, and it ended up severely brain damaged. And that jury awarded that child $97 million. And I looked at it and I said, gosh, that's a lot of money. But when you look at it, it's not.
For a life?
For that really probably wasn't enough for what that hospital and that doctor did, because there was no reason for the child to have the brain damage. All they had to do is what they're supposed to do.
So for anyone listening to the program right now that says, well, wait a minute, Gary, that's a lot of money, you're going to say, look at your child that you love. Would you take $97 million for their life?
It's the torture the child's going to be going through from the brain damage, and it will live probably a normal life expectancy.
But never be able to enjoy the things that you and I have been talking about.
Yeah. So, no, on first impression to me, I thought it was a large verdict. Then I changed my mind. It wasn't.
It can never be enough.
It would never be enough.
No.
If it had been $1 billion, it wouldn't have been enough when you get right down to it. But the 97 will make a difference in what that family and its guardians can do for it.
Yeah. So anyone that would say, oh, it was enough, would it be enough for you?
Nope.
No. The answer is no.
The next one is the fear of rejection. Is that a big one?
I think you just hit a nerve with everyone. Why is it we feel the need to be accepted? I mean, especially in today's time, we want everyone to accept us and acknowledge us, and we're so afraid that someone is going to reject us.
And that person that's doing the rejection has no power over you.
Zero.
Unless you give it freely.
Yeah.
Their opinion means nothing because you are what you are. And you need to be self-satisfied, my friends, with what and who you are. Be exactly the way the good Lord meant for you to be, or you wouldn't be here. Next one, the fear of missing out. How many of you have lost money that way? I'm going to go down and get that lottery ticket because I don't want to miss out.
Oh.
And all you do is lose your money on the lottery ticket.
So you make bad decisions because you don't want to be the one left out.
Oh, no, I want to get it. Every con artist, that's how they get you. They make you believe that if you don't rush to get this deal, it's going to go away and you will miss out.
How many times have you heard that sales pitch? There's only one spot left. If you don't get in now, you're going to miss out. Everybody else is going to make the money except you.
It is amazing how and we fall for it.
Yeah.
The fear of missing out.
The fear of missing out.
Oh, the money that's cost my friends that are listening, and I'm sure a bunch of you guys out there, gals, have been hit back.
I think you've been proposed a couple of those scenarios over the years to which you've turned down and said, that's okay, you guys make it all.
The next one is the fear of change, number 6.
Which you talked about.
We've already talked about change.
Why should there ever be a fear of change? Because that is a compliment. You're growing. Change is good.
Yeah, but that doesn't keep you from being afraid of it.
That's the truth.
Right?
Of course. It's why we sit at the same table in the restaurant. It's the reason we order the same food. It's the reason that we go to the same places. I guess it's because a routine makes us feel safe, doesn't it?
The key is to take it one day at a time.
Mm-hmm.
Just one day at a time. And implement the changes you want to make. You'll be okay.
You do that one day at a time, you'll find out you've changed a lot over the year. Makes sense.
Yep. The next, number 7, is the fear of losing control. Now these, we're talking about, if any of you just dialed in, we're talking about the 7 fears that will prevent you from becoming a successful person.
These things will hold you back.
Right. Number 7 is the fear of losing control. Number 1 is the fear of failure. Number 5 was the fear of missing out. Number 6 is the fear of change. So, folks, now we're going to move on to, the fear of losing control, number 7?
That was number 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Number 8, the fear of being judged. That goes hand in hand with the fear of rejection.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can separate the two of them.
I don't know that you can either, because the rejection, you are being judged, aren't you? If you're rejected.
In your opinion, you are.
Yeah, because you've been judged or you've been critiqued, or somebody's going to come up to you and go, you know what I would have done if it had been me? You know what you should have done?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, don't you love those words? That what do you call that? That unsolicited
advice.
the unsolicited advice. I always remember when we were building the house, you had taught me that lesson, the unsolicited advice, and I had an individual that came up and said, "You know what you should have done?" I said, "Yeah, I should have put a gate at the bottom of the hill so you couldn't have come up here." But
how many of my friends out there have said that to people recently? You should have done this, or you should have done that, or I would have done this, or I would have done that.
And we do it, Gary, over the simplest things. We do it over buying a car. We do it over your choice of clothing, what you order at the restaurant. I don't know why you ordered the hamburger. You should have got the chicken.
When you should have said, my friends, instead of I would have, you should have said, excellent choice.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
I wished I had ordered that.
I wish I'd had enough sense to do that.
Yeah, and you might end up with a friend.
Yeah, at least you won't have them mad at you.
I'll never forget an old story, and you know who I'm talking about. An individual had bought a classic car, and he pulled it up, and he was so proud of it, and he got out, and he said, "What do you think?" And another guy I worked with at the time walked up and said, "You do know that fender's got Bondo in it." And our buddy's face was red as blood. He was so mad he wanted to kill that guy because he said that. Because he had just bought this convertible classic car, and the last thing he wanted to hear was that the fender had Bondo in it.
I see a lot more had Bondo in it than just that fender.
Well, you know it did, of course.
Okay, number 9. The fear of something bad happening.
Oh, let's talk about that one. I have come to you on several times and said, what if this happens? What if that happens? And you have said, let's go to the absolute worst thing possible that can happen. And you would get me to go down the trail to where I would say, okay, the absolute worst is this, 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 this. And you would look at me and say, okay, well, how bad's that? And if it does happen, what are you going to do about it?
Actually, one of the things I would say to you, well, it happened. Can you live with it?
That, and then you added, well, at least they didn't put you in a pot, boil you, and eat you. Which I used to wonder, where in the hell did that come from? But I get it. Your point was, it could be a lot worse. They could put you in a pot, boil you, and eat you. So if they're not...
until it gets to that point, you can deal with it.
Yeah, so if it's not there, it's okay. You can handle it. It's no big deal. But it's the fear of what can go wrong, of the bad things that can happen. And once you go through it, you no longer fear it.
Well, bad things are going to happen.
They do all the time.
They happen no matter what you do or don't do.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, try to conquer your fear of bad things happening that's preventing you from going forward.
We knew that when we were kids in elementary school, and you were going to, back in the day when they did the spanking at the end of school, and you were so afraid and so worried, and the school came and you got the spanking and you went home. I mean, was it bad? Yeah, it hurt, but it wasn't as bad as you imagined.
This number 10 that he's wrote here is the fear of getting hurt. I don't understand that one.
Well, I think maybe I do. I think people hold back in a lot of ways. In other words, I'm not going to trust anybody because I could be hurt. I'm not going to love anybody because I could get hurt. I'm not going to break out and form a friendship with anybody because I could get hurt. Gary, if I'm reading it right, is it a safety mechanism that if I don't do anything, if I don't venture out of the house, I won't get eaten, by the wild animals?
Yeah, but that's no different than the fear of rejection, the fear of uncertainty,
There's
the fear of inadequacy.
a lot of it is similar, isn't it?
Because every one of these fears, you're afraid you're going to get hurt.
Well, the rejection is hurt. Being judged is hurt.
Being judged is hurt. That's what I'm saying.
You actually could have narrowed those down to 3 or 4?
Probably.
Yeah.
You could put it, if you really wanted to say what are the things that's keeping you from being a success, my friends, I'll tell you right now. Number 1, the fear of failure.
Failure.
to the fear of rejection.
Yeah. Yeah, you failed, and now you're
And-
going to be rejected and judged.
And probably the fear of something bad happening,
Yeah.
which is, but if you put every one of these is actually included within the fear of failure,
All 10 of them?
all 10 of them.
So when you bring the fear of being hurt, judged, rejection, bad things could happen, all of that, it all comes down to I'm going to fail. People are going to judge me. They're going to laugh at me.
That's right.
They're going to talk about me because I jumped out there and I took a chance and I failed. And to that you say, so what? You failed. Try it again. And there's a good possibility that the next time that you go out there and do it, you're not going to fail. But most people that have ever tried anything have failed and failed often.
Just remember, never slap a man that's chewing tobacco.
And never drink downstream from the herd.
And there's 2 theories of arguing with a woman, and neither works.
Neither works. So all of these great tips we told you about keeping you from being happy, trust me, if you argue with a lady, you're not going to be happy. If you drink down from the herd, you're not going to be happy. And if you slap the guy chewing tobacco, you're not going to be happy. So you got to be happy to be successful.
That's right. It all comes down to that. This year of the program.
You know,
Everything is, how's my friends going to learn to be happy out there?
whether it's the quotes you read or whether it's the tips that are keeping you from happiness, what I love about what you do is you simply ask people to think. You don't ask them to agree or disagree. You just ask them to think about how it affects them and what's going on in their lives. And maybe, just maybe, somebody out there will say, you know what, I'm going to take what Gary said, and I'm going to be happier, and I'm going to be a success because of it.
And if you're in a bad situation, get out of it. And you say, oh, but you were smart enough to get yourself in that mess. You're smart enough to get yourself out of it.
And it is more powerful than a force-filled or a bulletproof vest to be able to walk up to someone and say, I withdraw your permission.
I will. And remember, no one in the world can make you miserable unless you give them permission, except your children.
But isn't that powerful to be able to say, I'm sorry, I had to withdraw your permission. You can no longer make me miserable.
Right. If I'm going to be miserable, I'm going to make myself miserable. I'm not going to let you do it.
And unfortunately, most of us do a good job at that.
That's
so.
right. I'll do it myself.
Oh, my goodness. If you'd like to get in touch with Gary, you can do that. Gary at GaryCJohnson.com. If you've been listening to the whole program, you know that Gary is a personal injury attorney, and he has a staff that is absolutely fantastic. If you need his services, please contact him, Gary at GaryCJohnson.com. Or if you want to leave a message about the program, whether you agree or disagree, we'd like to hear from you. My friend, thank you so much for being here.
It's wonderful to be here, my friend.
Do not slap a man chewing tobacco. On behalf of Gary C. Johnson, I'm Keith Casebolt. Thank you so much for taking this time to tune into the program. As always, Gary and I look forward to seeing you again next week, right here at this same time.
Thank you for listening to Simply the Law of Life, a program created by attorney Gary C. Johnson. Until next week, may you be safe, blessed, and happy.
If you're hurt, injured, don't waste time. Gary Johnson cries for every dime.